And here we are. So on the topic of tracking your HR information and systems, when do you need a proper system to track your HR information, and what do you look for? Because spreadsheets will get you so far, and then they're trouble.
Yeah, I think most companies start out with spreadsheets, really big ones. Actually, they start out really small. Sometimes you just get handed a file folder and say, this is all of our HR information, and I'm like, oh, where's the rest of it? And so sometimes it's a matter of going and building that information. So a lot of the times when you're joining a startup, they've given an offer package. That person has signed off. Hopefully you still have a copy of that somewhere, and it's in a file, hopefully a locked cabinet. But that information isn't all tracked somewhere. So you join and you're like, okay, I want to get a snapshot of the organization and what do we have in house and how is the org structure built? Well, that doesn't exist. So, I mean, the earlier it goes in, probably the better, because then you don't have, these giant spreadsheets where you forget which version you're working on, and, things can get edited very easily, and you don't have a history of when things changed and why they changed. Systems, like TribeHR do a lot of the work for us. We use TribeHR at MFlick, and it builds an org chart for us. So our CEO, if he needs one, he just goes in and he prints one off, and it's brilliant. I don't have to go and make one. And anytime you make a change in the organization, it's reflected there. So I think the earlier you can start organizing all your information, the easier it is to leverage that information. So it's one thing to just have it somewhere, but it's what you do with that information that I think is really important.
Is there a magic number that at a certain number of employees, now is the time? Or?
I think at 5 people, you're like, oh, I know what you make, and myself. But as you start to grow, and as things start to change, so you might know what they started at, but maybe if you gave them an increase and you're like, I gave you like a 5% increase. Okay, so what are you at now? Whatever, right? What does our payroll say, right? And then so you start relying on the things that you do have in place. So, I mean, I don't know what the employee number would be, but I'd say probably when you're starting to get in the 10 to 15 employees range, you're starting to think, ooh, I really don't have all this information somewhere. How can I get that?
Right. Ellie?
I think when you get to about 11 staff, that's when you need to hire an HR person. And that person in the beginning of a company should be extremely organized and manage the spreadsheets, and you should be able to email them at any day and say, can you send me the org chart? And they can redo it because it's not that many people. And how many vacation days has everyone taken? They can send you an email. The day that HR person says, there's too many staff, I need you to hire a second HR person, that's when you say, now you get some software. Because it's probably cheaper to buy software than to hire a second person. That's kind of the rule, yeah.
That's the magic rule of thumb. Natalie, anything to add around systems?
Yeah, for us, we're using spreadsheets, and we're using our payroll system to keep all of our employee information in line. One bit of advice is just watch your documentation. Some startups, they don't keep documentation on their employees, but it can really come in handy. So keep files on each one of your employees, grab their resumes, grab their references, grab your interview notes, put it all there, start a file on each one of your employees and lock it up, but try to keep that as organized as possible because you might rely on some of that information going forward.
Is the same thing true for the recruiting process? I'm assuming that if it's a continual thing or if you have searches that recur, you want to be able to reuse some of what you've learned. And I've worked with lots of companies that have somebody's inbox as the central repository for all things resumes, and that's tricky to use.
Yeah, we've definitely gone back to some of the jobs we've interviewed for prior years before, and we're able to pull some of the top candidates in there, or gone back and seen what kind of questions we asked, and we got a couple hires actually from candidates that were maybe second or third runners up, so it kind of cut the recruitment process right down. But yeah, we'll save all of our resumes and interview notes for a couple years in files as well.
Just to add on to that, sometimes retaining those notes are really important because often you ask really great questions in the interview, such as like, where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years? That information is really powerful, and people are really candid when they're in interviews and where they want to go because they're hoping that you can provide that opportunity for them. So I think when you're looking at things like building skills matrix and taking a look at, what are the resources you have in-house and where do they want to go? Because ultimately, when it comes to retention, you're hoping that not only are they contributing towards your company and where you guys are going, but that you're also helping them with their development. And so if you have that always in sort of the back of your mind, or you have that tracked somewhere, and you decide you're going to hire a product manager all of a sudden, and you're like, hey, just remember that so-and-so has always wanted to move into a product management role, and it's so much stronger it's far better to hire somebody internally that knows your product, knows your company, fits with the culture, and give them that opportunity to grow within, than to go out and start a brand new search and have those people have to get the buy-in of the rest of the team.
Absolutely.